There is a child in the Katangan province of the Democratic Republic of Congo who wakes up before sunrise every morning and walks to a hole in the ground. He is not walking to school. He is not walking to a field. He is walking to a cobalt mine, a small, hand-dug shaft that goes straight down into the red earth, barely wide enough for a body, with no reinforcement, no lighting, and no ventilation. He descends into that shaft and he digs by hand, with a chisel and a bag, and he fills that bag with ore, and in that ore, there is cobalt. His name is not important to the people who buy the cobalt. What is important is this: the cobalt in that bag, after it leaves his hands and passes through a dozen intermediaries, will end up in a lithium-ion battery, in a phone, in a laptop, in the electric vehicle of someone who has never heard of Katangan, and never will. The phone in your pocket almost certainly contains cobalt from that hole in the ground, and the child who dug it earns approximately $1 a day. Here is the number at the center of everything: $24 trillion. That is the estimated value of the mineral wealth sitting beneath the soil of the Democratic Republic of Congo. 24 trillion. The combined GDP of Europe and the United States, all of it. Cobalt, copper, coltan, gold, diamonds, uranium, tin, manganese, germanium concentrated in a single country that sits in the middle of Africa. Like a geological miracle that history turned into a curse, the DRC controls roughly 70% of the world's cobalt reserves. Without Congolese cobalt, the global electric vehicle revolution does not happen. Every smartphone made in the last decade contains Congolese minerals. The uranium that powered the Manhattan Project, the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, came from a single mine in Katangan called Shinkalabu. The modern world was partially built on what the Congo holds underground, and the average Congolese citizen earns approximately $400 a year. This is the question we're going to sit with until it becomes unbearable, because that is the only honest way to look at it. How does a country with $24 trillion under its feet have a population where the majority live on less than $2 a day? How does the richest geology on Earth produce the poorest people? The answer is in the geography, but not in the way you think. Open a map of the DRC, not a political map, a physical one. What you see is a country the size of Western Europe, more than 2 million square kilometers, almost entirely enclosed by geography that makes it one of the most isolated interior spaces on the planet. The Congo River, the second most powerful on Earth by water volume, does not help. It should help. In any other geography, a river this size would be the engine of trade, the highway of commerce, the thing that connects interior wealth to coastal markets. But we have already visited this problem. In its final 350 kilometers, the Congo drops so violently through rapids and cataracts that it cannot be navigated. The Livingstone Falls system alone contains 30 separate rapids. No ship has ever made a continuous journey from the interior to the sea. The minerals in Katangan in the south, the coltan in the eastern highlands near the Rwandan border, the gold in the Ituri forest, all of it sits deep inside a country whose rivers turn into waterfalls before they reach the ocean, whose rainforest, the second largest on Earth, covers hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of terrain where there are no paved roads, where a truck breaking down can mean a week without movement, where the infrastructure cost of getting anything from the ground to a port is so staggering that for decades, the only entities that could afford it were the entities who had already decided how much of the profit they were keeping. Belgium built approximately 140,000 kilometers of roads across the Congo during the colonial era, not to connect people, not to enable commerce between Congolese communities, to extract roads from mine to port, railways from copper belt to coast. The infrastructure followed the mineral and ended where the mineral ran out. When the DRC gained independence in 1960, it inherited a transport network designed specifically to siphon wealth outward, with nothing built to enable the Congolese to trade with each other, develop local industry, or add value to what they dug from the ground. As one analysis put it with devastating precision, it was not the mines that followed the roads. The roads followed the mines, and where mining was no longer profitable, the roads simply stopped. But the geography of isolation is only the first layer. The second layer is older and darker. In 1885, at the Berlin Conference, the European powers divided Africa between themselves on paper. The Congo Basin, all 2.5 million square kilometers of it, was awarded not to a government, not to a nation, but to a single private individual, a man who had never visited, a man who had convinced the assembled powers that he wanted to bring civilization and free trade to the African interior. His name was Leopold II, King of the Belgians. What he built in the Congo was not civilization, it was the most efficient private extraction machine the modern world had ever seen. And the geography that made the Congo's minerals so difficult to access also made the Congo's people so difficult to reach, that what happened to them could be kept secret for decades. The Congo rubber, unlike Brazilian rubber, which could be tapped from cultivated trees, grew in wild vines deep in the jungle. To harvest it, Congolese workers slashed the vines and lathered their own bodies with the latex as it ran out, letting it harden on their skin, and then scraped it off. The pain was significant, the process was brutal, and it was enforced by Leopold's private army, the Force Publique, which operated on a simple principle. For every bullet fired, a severed human hand must be presented as proof it was not wasted. What followed became, when the world finally learned of it through the investigations of Roger Casement and the journalism of E.D. Morel, the first major international human rights scandal of the modern era. Soldiers who ran out of bullets cut living hands from living people to make up their count. Villages that missed their rubber quota were burned. Women and children were taken hostage. Men were flogged to death with the chakot, a whip made from dried hippopotamus hide. The population of the Congo declined by somewhere between 1 million and 10 million people. Under Leopold's rule, the range is wide because no one was counting carefully. The people being killed were not the people doing the counting. Leopold never visited the Congo. He built palaces in Brussels with the proceeds. When international pressure finally forced him to surrender the territory to the Belgian state in 1908, he wept. He was quoted as saying, "The Congo had become a magnificent cake, and everyone wanted a slice." He meant that as a complaint about losing it. We are moving forward, but the geography is not. When Belgium finally granted the Congo independence on June 30, 1960, the new nation had approximately 17 university graduates among its entire population of 15 million. 17. The Belgians had educated just enough Congolese to fill the lowest administrative positions and not one position more. They had spent 75 years extracting, and they had left behind a country with 140,000 kilometers of extraction roads and almost no capacity to govern itself, feed itself, or develop its own resources. Patrice Lumumba became the first prime minister. He was 34 years old, charismatic, brilliant, and burning with the specific fury of a man who understood exactly what had been done to his country and intended to stop it. He gave a speech at the independence ceremony that the Belgian king, sitting in the front row, had not been shown in advance. He described what colonialism had done to the Congolese people, the humiliations, the exploitation, the murders, in language so precise and so devastating that the Belgian delegation went pale. He lasted 79 days as prime minister. The Katanga province, where most of the copper and cobalt sat, immediately attempted to secede. Funded and supported by Union Minière du Haut-Katanga, the Belgian mining conglomerate that had controlled Katanga's resources for half a century and had no intention of surrendering them to a nationalist government. Lumumba called for Soviet military assistance to suppress the secession. That phone call sealed his fate. In August 1960, CIA Director Allen Dulles wrote to Eisenhower, "We conclude that Lumumba's removal must be an urgent and prime objective." The CIA had a particular reason to be alarmed: the Shinkalab uranium mine in Katanga. The mine whose ore was enriched to produce the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was still operational. The richest uranium ore ever found, anywhere, was sitting in Congolese ground. The idea of a Soviet-aligned government controlling it was, to the American national security establishment, inconceivable. On January 17, 1961, 3 days before John F. Kennedy's inauguration, Patrice Lumumba was driven to a clearing in Katanga at night, placed against a tree, and shot. Congolese soldiers fired the shots. A Belgian officer gave the order. The CIA had been informed and had taken no action to prevent it. Belgium formally admitted moral responsibility for the assassination in 2002. In 2026, A Belgian court ordered a 93-year-old former diplomat to stand trial for war crimes for his role in Lumumba's detention and transfer. The trial is being held 65 years later. The Congo is still poor. Here is where the comfortable version of this story, the one that stops at colonialism and calls it explained, has to be challenged directly, because the narrative that has dominated Western coverage of Congo's poverty for decades goes like this. The DRC is poor because of corruption, because of failed governance, because of tribal conflict, because African leaders failed to manage their resources responsibly after independence. This narrative is not entirely false. Corruption is real. Mobutu Sese Seko, who ruled for 32 years on a throne installed by the CIA following Lumumba's assassination, looted somewhere between $4 and $15 billion from the Congolese state. Personally, he renamed the country Zaire. He built a palace in his home village reachable only by private aircraft. He sent the country's treasury to Switzerland while the road network inherited from Belgium literally disintegrated back into jungle. The corruption is real. The governance failures are real. But here is what that narrative misses. Mobutu was installed, funded, and sustained in power by the United States government for 32 years specifically because he was willing to let Western corporations extract Congolese minerals at terms that served Western interests. The corruption was not a failure of the system. It was a feature. A corrupt, personally enriched dictator who controlled the army and kept the communists out was exactly what the Cold War architecture required in the Congo. The West got the minerals. Mobutu got the money. The Congolese people got neither. After Mobutu fell in 1997, the wars that followed, the First and Second Congo Wars, involving 9 countries and killing an estimated 5 million people in the deadliest conflict since World War II, were fueled, sustained, and prolonged by the same mineral wealth that has always made Congo a target. Armed groups controlled mining territories. Coltan prices spiked globally, and Eastern Congo descended into a competition between militias for control of the deposits. International corporations bought minerals from whoever controlled the ground, without asking how the control was established or what it cost the people living on it. Today, the M23 rebel group, backed, according to extensive UN reporting, by Rwanda, controls large areas of eastern Congo rich in gold and coltan. Rwanda, a country with minimal mineral reserves of its own, has become a major exporter of coltan and gold. The geography of the Congo's mineral wealth in the east, near the border with Rwanda and Uganda, created what analysts call a structural invitation to external predation. Minerals valuable enough to kill for, terrain isolated enough that the killing could continue for decades without the world noticing. Much, the geography has one more dimension that almost no analysis of Congo's poverty includes. The Congo Basin is the largest contiguous tropical rainforest in the world outside the Amazon. It covers approximately 1.7 million square kilometers. It is home to extraordinary biodiversity, to rivers that regulate Central Africa's entire water cycle, and to communities of people who have lived within it sustainably for thousands of years. It is also, economically, a trap. The same forest that produces breathtaking biological richness makes large-scale agriculture functionally impossible in most of the country. The soils beneath tropical rainforest are notoriously poor. The nutrients are locked in the biomass, not the earth. Clear the forest for farming in the soil, and protected from tropical rain and equatorial heat, leaches its nutrients within a few growing seasons and hardens. The Congo cannot simply redirect from mining to agriculture. The geography that produced the mineral bonanza also foreclosed most of the agricultural alternatives. The Congo sits astride the equator. It receives enormous rainfall. It has, according to the UN Environment Program, half of Africa's freshwater resources. And yet, the Inga falls on the Congo River, the site of a proposed hydroelectric project that would be the largest dam on Earth, capable of generating 40,000 megawatts of electricity, enough to power all of sub-Saharan Africa, has been in discussion for over 60 years and remains largely unbuilt, not because the geography won't cooperate, because the same forces that have always controlled Congo's resources have never had strong enough incentives to build infrastructure that would primarily benefit Congolese people. What remains in the Congo today is the geometric consequence of 5 layers of the same story, stacked on top of each other. Layer 1, geography, that isolates mineral wealth inside jungle and behind impassable rapids, making extraction possible only for entities with enormous capital and no obligation to the people. Living above the minerals. Layer 2. Colonial extraction architecture. Roads to ports, railways to coast, designed to move wealth out and leave nothing behind. Layer 3. The deliberate assassination of the one leader who tried to redirect the wealth toward his own people, followed by 3 decades of CIA-supported kleptocracy. Layer 4. Post-Mobutu wars sustained and funded by the minerals themselves, creating a cycle where the resource generates the conflict that justifies the extraction that funds the conflict. Layer 5. A global supply chain so long and so deliberately opaque that the person buying an electric vehicle with a clean conscience in Oslo or Austin has no mechanism to connect their purchase to the child in the hand-dug shaft in Katanga. The phone in your pocket is a participant in the system whether you consent to it or not. The electricity powering your laptop may be running on cobalt that was dug by a child. The geography that created the mineral wealth also created the conditions for its indefinite extraction without accountability, because accountability requires infrastructure, and the infrastructure was never built to serve the people. It was built to serve the minerals. There is a moment in 2020 that concentrates all of this into a single image. The DRC, which controls 70% of the world's cobalt and is therefore indispensable to the global transition to clean energy, signed a minerals deal with the United States. The deal offered DRC minerals in exchange for security assistance to combat the M23 rebellion in the east. The negotiations were framed as a partnership, as an investment in stability, as the beginning of a new chapter. Analysts noted carefully that the deal, like the Chinese Infrastructure for Minerals Agreement signed in 2007, would primarily benefit the extracting party unless the DRC government could enforce terms that had historically never been enforced. The same month the deal was being negotiated, the M23 rebel group, backed by Rwanda, which exports Congolese minerals through its own borders, captured Goma, the largest city in eastern Congo and the hub of the region's mining trade. 7,000 civilians were killed. 2 million people were displaced. The minerals kept moving. The geography is unchanged. The plateau is still high. The rivers still fall. The forest still surrounds everything. $24 trillion sits in the ground, and the child in Katanga woke up before sunrise this morning and walked to his hole. The question that follows you out of this video cannot be answered by a YouTube video. It can only be held. The clean energy revolution, the transition away from fossil fuels, the electric vehicles, the battery storage systems, is built on an implicit promise that it represents progress, a better world, a greener future. That promise is real for the people who buy the batteries, but the people who dig the cobalt that makes the batteries possible have been living inside a version of this story since 1885. The material changes. Rubber becomes cobalt. Leopold becomes a mining corporation. The Force Publique becomes an armed militia, but the structure, extract, export, impoverish, has never been interrupted for long enough to change. The Congo is not poor because of bad luck. It is not poor because of African failure. It is poor because it is rich, because its geography concentrated staggering mineral wealth in a place that outside powers found it easier to take from than to build with, and because every time someone from within the Congo tried to build something different, tried to say, "This wealth belongs to us," they were removed by a bullet, by a coup, by a proxy war, by a debt trap, by an armed group funded by someone else's interest in the same minerals. If you have never heard this version told this way, without euphemism, without the comfortable distance of development economics language, without pretending the supply chain doesn't reach your pocket, you won't find it put together like this anywhere else. Stay close.